Classifying conflict is not a mere theoretical exercise for us at the International Committee of the Red Cross. International humanitarian law, also known as the rules of war, seeks to limit suffering during wars. However, what level and what type of violence amounts to a war, or as we say legally, an armed conflict? To understand when international humanitarian law applies, we need to know if a situation is an armed conflict. This is crucial for all warring parties, whether they are state military or non-state armed groups, such as an armed opposition. It's their responsibility to understand their legal obligations and spare civilians from the fighting. For instance, under international humanitarian law, parties to an armed conflict have the obligation to firstly limit how wars are fought and with which weapons, so as to reduce as much as possible the suffering of both civilians and fighters. Secondly, treat humanely all people detained in relation to the war. And thirdly, allow and facilitate rapid and unimpeded passage of humanitarian relief for civilians in need. How is armed conflict defined in international humanitarian law? There are only two types of armed conflicts, international and non-international. An international armed conflict involves two or more states. It is triggered by any use of armed force between states, regardless of intensity, duration, or the number of soldiers involved. Non-international armed conflicts, also commonly referred to as civil wars, are conflicts between government armed forces and non-state armed groups, or solely between armed groups. Basically, two main criteria must be met. First, the warring parties must be organized, which depends on factors like having a command structure. Second, the violence must be sufficiently intense. And this means the number of armed confrontations, for instance, or the types of weapons used, or the number of casualties. Most rules of international humanitarian law actually apply to both types of conflict. However, some rules, such as the treatment of prisoners of war, apply only to international conflicts. Defining a situation of armed conflict, importantly, does not legitimize a war. Political or other motivations play no role in the classification of armed conflict. It simply serves the humanitarian objective to limit suffering.